So a few years ago, my wife, Mrs. Primetime, and I went over to a garage sale where we saw this at the end of a driveway. And certainly looked like a little garbage can from the outside. And when we peeked inside, though, we did not see garbage. What we saw inside were little toy pieces. Now, it's funny because the guy who was actually selling these actually referred to it as garbage and said that's why he put it in this thing, and that if he didn't sell it by the end of the day, that's where it was going to go. It was going to go out in the garbage, go out in the trash, because he was sick of them just taking up space in his house. His kids had outgrown them, didn't want them anymore, and again, he wanted nothing to do with them whatsoever. So we asked him how much he wanted for this, and to our surprise, he said $3. And, you know, it was one of those situations when someone throws out that low price to you that really just shows they just want to get rid of it. They don't care, but you know that it has some value. Now, for us at the time, the value wasn't to immediately resell it. The value was that we thought that maybe our son would like to play with it, Primetime Jr. Now, it turns out they actually sat in my basement for 2 years where they just languished, and he never really got into it, never really played with these things. Now, I'll show you them in a different layout here with them all spread out, and I'll reveal, if you don't know what these are, in just a moment. You might have a little bit of an inkling on the brand, although they're not traditional for the brand. They actually kind of broke ground with the brand here. Now you can see I have them bunched together a little bit, and then I took another shot to give an alternate perspective of them spread out a bit. This is 12 pounds worth of these. That's one of the advantages of having these things in, you know, like a canister like that. You could easily just, or you could put them in a box, just put them on a scale and just get a sense of weight, because what you want to do with something like this is sell these things off as bulk. You don't want to bother trying to find all the different pieces that go together. It's too much. It's 12 pounds worth, and there's no guarantee whatsoever when you're offering something like that that you could offer any kind of complete sets or anything like that. So it's just a bunch of assorted parts. Well, it turns out that when we were doing spring cleaning, during this pandemic, just, you know, finding stuff, just organizing things, my son said he didn't want these anymore and we could just sell them. So weighed them, did some comp checking on eBay, wound up listing it for $150. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, you actually saw the day that I put these all on the ground and took these very photos that you see here. And within just a few days, in fact, it's actually today, so just a few days later, they sold for the price that you see there, $150, no questions asked. What are they? They are Legos, but they're not just any kind of Legos. I know a lot of you know, yes, that you could resell Legos, but these are different types of Legos. They're Lego Bionicles. And if you haven't heard of this before, you need to know about it. And let me stop you for a moment if you're looking at this and saying, I don't sell toys. I'm not into toys, so this is not going to be of interest to me. I'm going to show you so many different ways that this brand has been merchandised. Even if you sell clothes, I'm going to even show you an example of a shirt later on with the Bionicles brand on it. This thing has been merchandised like crazy. And one of the things I want to get across to people when I do these kind of review videos is you don't have to know everything about everything, okay? You really just need to know a little bit about a lot of stuff to be successful as a reseller. Sure, if you just want to focus on one niche, you could do that, but you'll really be able to diversify your business if you do what I'm saying, and you just have some of this awareness of some of these brands and some of these things in other categories if this, again, isn't your main interest area. So I'm going to dive into this topic of Bionicles. Certainly, yes, if you find these in big bulk like this, you could sell them like that. But let me tell you a little bit about the history of Bionicles, and also I'm going to show you some amazing things to be on the lookout for, some incredible comps, things that go for just huge money, some of which are just moderate sales and stuff, but still really profitable things to be on the lookout for. So when these things are assembled, what they're going to look like, and let me move it up here. I have a little presentation here, and then we'll go back up to the the internet browser there. But this is what the basic 6 Bionicles are. And this, when they started them off in a line of 6. So that's really important. If you're ever out there and you come across like the original ones, they're really going to sell best if you have 6 of them as opposed to 5. But I'll explain to you in a little bit more. The key concept about these things is that there's a storyline behind them, which is based on elements of the earth and just like natural properties and stuff like that. So like the blue one over there, that one represents water. The black one represents earth. The green one represents air, which I always thought was weird because I thought he should represent like grass or like the forest or something like that. But I'm very literal like that. The brown one represents stones, and the red one represents fire, and the white one represents ice. So all those make sense to me, again, except the green one is not so obvious. But and they all have their own specific names, named after a culture in New Zealand, which kind of got Lego in trouble a little bit, and they had to work things out with with the Maori culture, so that they had to rename some things. Some things they kept the same, but there was a whole big brouhaha about that. But anyway, actually, let me make this a little bit bigger, because let me kind of delve into how this all even came to be, because in the 1990s, Lego was really struggling. They used to be the giant in toys, or one of the giants in toys, but they started to lose their footing. Their brand was kind of getting stale. They needed something to kind of bring it back to life with a newer generation, and they're really struggling to do that. If you want to learn more about the history of this, go and watch the documentary on Legos for the Netflix series, The Toys That Made Us, and they go into it in a lot more detail. But one of the competing brands that was causing them a lot of problems was Pokemon. And Pokemon has a really rich storyline behind it that kids really got into. And, if you were around back in the 90s, and every single kid had Pikachu and was talking about Pokemon, it was absolutely crazy. Kids were like obsessed with it. And they're really, frankly, more interested in this than Lego. So Lego had to do something. So what did they do first? They reached out to what is like the most obvious thing. It's like, okay, let's reach out to Star Wars and let's try to do some stuff with Star Wars. And so this actually is one of the be on the lookout items. This is their first item that they came out with, this Lego's X-Wing fighter. And if you ever found this, if you were lucky enough to find it new in the box, new old stock, this is almost a $300 piece. So definitely be on the lookout for it. It'll still sell well even if it's not new in the box, as long as it's complete. But the problem with dealing with Star Wars, they have to deal with Lucasfilms and stuff, and they have to pay royalties. So they really wanted to kind of separate off and wanted to do their own thing, not be beholden to Star Wars. And so you got to admire that. They wanted to kind of create their own kind of sub-brand within Lego. And so what they started to do is they came out with this Technic brand. And this is actually one of my sales. Some of you may remember me selling this. I did a pickup of a whole bunch of toys over the summertime, and this was one of the Lego pieces that I wound up getting. That's my actual sale there. $22 for this piece. And so, it's more of a technical build with the Technic brand. They even have like little motors and stuff, and real fancy schmancy, like not the very basic building block type of things that you would expect from a traditional Lego set. So they started to work on that, and it had some popularity, but it didn't really have a storyline behind it. And so they started to evolve a little bit more into some other things. One of the things they came up with was Throwbots, as you can see here. And this starts to take on the design of what you would eventually see in a Bionicle. Now, this is one of those Throwbots that you could see here. And in fact, you'll actually see in the title, and this is something to know when you're listing, they actually call it pre-Bionicle. So that's something people will sometimes search for. So it's important to put in there. You can see it's under the Lego Technic brand, but then it's also called a Throwbot. Some of these would throw discs and stuff like that. So they were cool. If you found this one would go new for $60. So that's a good thing to be on the lookout for as well. You might want to jot some of these names down. And then Also under the Technic brand, and this is where we start getting another type of similarity in the evolution towards what was to become Bionicles, are these Robo Riders. And so these Robo Riders were also named after different elements, like we have the in fact, I can make it a little bit bigger here. We have the red one, for example, represents lava, and the white one there represents frost. You could also see that they come in these canisters. And this was what Bionicles would eventually come in, were these canisters. Now, I personally never like that. I don't like things coming in canisters. You know, when I see canisters, I want sour cream Pringles potato chips when I pop open a canister, or I want some, a canister. I want like a big Mountain Dew or something like that. I don't want a toy inside of a canister. Just not for me. I don't think I would have liked that. It's interesting that my son didn't really glom onto them either. He knew about ones that were in canisters, but a lot of people did like eventually what was to become Bionicles because of the rich storyline that they developed around it. But anyway, so that was one of the things that they did. Something to be on the lookout for when you're searching for the Bionicles, that they came in these little canisters. So let me actually, I have a little bit more here. I'll move a little forwards here. In terms of actually the development of it, this guy's real important. His name is Alistair Swinnerton. Basically after they were developing this Technic line, and they had those motorcycles that I just showed you, and some of the other things like the Throwbots. They're like, all right, we think we have something here, let's try to develop it out a little bit more. So they called Alistair there to kind of develop basically a storyline behind this new brand. Now, they didn't know what to call it at the time. This was what was to become Bionicles, and initially they called it the Boneheads of Voodoo Island. Now, that sounds silly right now, especially if you know about Bionicles and what it is. You're like, wow, I can never imagine referring to it that way. But actually, that title is very interesting because it reminded Alistair Swinnerton. He writes about this on his blog. You go read about it. Reminded him of Easter Island and some of the culture there. And he said, you know what, that sounds pretty interesting. I would like to actually develop something around that theme. And so he came up with the idea. Not just him, there were other people involved in making it, but he was really a main driving force. He wanted to call them Evoids, which would be a combination of evolving droids, but Lego wanted to call them Bionicles, which is a combination of biological and chronicle. It turns out that, obviously Lego's name was the one that stuck, and that's not something that Alistair Swinnerton has any hard feelings about. He actually says, you know what, that name is pretty cool. In fact, the very first time that I heard it was in 2003. The brand came out, they tested it out in and I'll show you, this is actually a prototype of it right here that Swinnerton developed. They actually tested out in Europe in 2000, and they brought it to the United States in 2001. Now, I first heard about it in 2003 when I was on internship at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. I remember the day. A colleague of mine named Jeff, we were working in a children's clinic, and he said to me, he's talking about one of the kids, and he started to interview him, and he's like, he started talking about Bionicles. You like Bionicles? And the kid's like, I love Bionicles. I love Bionicles. I looked at my friend Jeff. I'm like, the hell are Bionicles? I just was out of touch at that time. I did not know what they were, which, by the way, is another tip. It's something I've come to learn. When you come across children, any children in your life, could be grandkids, it could be even your own kids, could be nephews, nieces. Talk to them about what they like, what they're interested in, because as adults, we're not always connected into that. Even myself, who still likes comic books and toys and that sort of thing, I don't know everything at the level of, let's say, a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old in terms of what they might like, that I might find and come across the source that I could then go and sell. But it was really readily apparent to me as soon as I heard that, saw that kid's reaction, and then started hearing other kids talk about it, that Lego had something here. And this is them, and there's the canisters that you could see over there, and there's 6 again. If you were to find all 6 in the canisters that had the instructions, you're talking about $150, $160 you could get out of these. So again, just another kind of thing to be on the lookout for besides just the bulk parts. But I also want to tell you about how this really just exploded, because it wasn't just that it was limited to just these, little toys, and they would release like new Bionicles every 6 months. It wasn't that it was just limited to those initial 6. They just kept coming out with more and more and more of them, and it really exploded in the 2000s, like I was saying. In fact, in 2003 and 2006, it was Lego's number one toy in terms of sales, and it actually took them out of the financial decline that they were in the 1990s. I mean, this was really the driving force. Really, Bionicles actually saved Legos pretty much. I mean, it was that's how important and how significant it was, which is kind of ironic today because, as I'll explain, they don't even make them anymore. So it was something that kind of had its time. It pretty much had like a 10-year run. They tried to bring it back in 2015, but it didn't really work. But there still are people nostalgic for it now, and so that's why you need to know about it, especially because some people will want to go back and try to find things associated with the merchandising. So let me show you a few other things you might find on your sourcing travels. Some more rare than others that you definitely want to be on the lookout for. So, I had to throw this in here, right? I had to throw in comic books. Yes, they made Bionicle comic books, as you can see here. And yeah, if you find one or two of them, it's not worth it. You're not going to be able to sell them. But if you could find a big grouping of them, like you have here, there's there's a total of 49 of them. Person actually sold these for $150. That's pretty darn good. So be on the lookout for bunches of Lego Bionicle comic books. In addition to the comic books, they also made regular books because there was this whole rich storyline that they developed about this planet that they were on and the fight of good versus evil. And so you could see here they came out with these really cool monster creatures. Now it's interesting because Lego, interestingly enough, was very resistant to this at first. I mean, yeah, they wanted to develop it, and Alistair developed like what he calls a Bible about the whole entire series and how it was to develop, and he's worked on it continuously over time. But initially there was some resistance in Lego because they didn't know how to develop their own storyline, so they were a little bit nervous about trying to develop their own thing, to step out, try something new. And this is good reinforcement also for people watching this in terms of business tips. You've got to sometimes step out of your comfort zone. I say this all the time. If Lego did not step out of their comfort zone, they might not even be around today. As crazy as that does sound, they really were going downhill. Again, watch that series on Netflix. It goes into it. I mean, they were really, really in trouble. They really had to make a big turnaround. But there was some resistance there, but eventually, once they saw how popular this was with the kids, and they started doing market testing and stuff, they saw they obviously had to ride with it. There also was some concern about the creatures and them kind of being scary because, Legos is known for like those little happy little guys and not having anything real fearsome. And so they tried to just market it and pitch it as good versus evil. But these books here, a lot of 10 wound up selling for about $40 once you factor in the shipping. So be on the lookout for those. You will come across those types of things at garage sales. And if you do find them, come back here, shout me out, let me know, tell me in the comments that you found something Bionicles. You might even realize when you're watching this that you have some stuff around the house right now that you could list and put up. Here's a movie. Now this is new, and obviously the prices are going to go down, if it's pre-owned and stuff, but new, Bionicle Mask of Light. That's about a $21, $22 movie right there in new condition. They also came out with cards, and it's funny. We talked about Pokemon's associated with cards. Well, now here we have Bionicle Cards, and so this is a gaming deck and a trading card deck, and so just pretty interesting that they have this. This is something and still available to this day. $70 plus $10 shipping. That's actually what these have sold for. So if you ever came across some of the old Bionicle cards, that's cool as well, these game decks. And in addition, they also had board games. So you might come across Bionicle board games, come across board games all the time, right, at garage sales. And these aren't super old, so you might come across something like this. So here we have this one here. And you could see, usually you're going to see like the 6 main figures, generally on the cover somewhere. So That's another, obvious clue, but this is around $40 for this game. Again, in new condition, so if it's old, you want to make sure, if it's pre-owned, that you're checking for parts, that sort of thing. I mentioned earlier about shirts. There are some Bionicle clothes. They're actually kind of challenging to find, so this is actually a newer one that someone has made. Again, here we have the 6 figures on the front, and the prices vary from like $10 to $20 on this particular print, but that's because it's new. But if you were to find a one of the older Bionicle shirts that was made, the price could actually go up pretty high depending on what it is that you find, because again, they don't come up that often on the marketplace, so be on the lookout for those. They also made various toiletries associated with the Bionicles. So here we've got one here as a toothbrush. So Colgate marketed a line of these as well. So be on the lookout for those. If you come across something like this, that's why I always say when you go to estate sales, check. Even though the bathrooms look boring, always go in there and look in the medicine cabinets, and just look in any cabinets, closets. You never know what you'll find in there. You could come across something like this. Parent bought something like this for your kids, they never used it. I've come across and done very well with old toothbrushes. Some of you might remember a really nice sale I made for like $100 about a year or two ago on a Masters of the Universe toothbrush that I found from like the early to mid 1980s. That was still in the original box, so it's crazy. So you never know. Stuff's out there. This is one of the craziest ones. So they did marketing with McDonald's, and sometimes those McDonald's toys, if you have, depending on what you have, they could sell for crazy money. So this one here at auction, 37 bids, went up to $525. Of course, I can't give you an assurance that was actually paid, but that's what it went off as, and that's just crazy. So these here are sealed and actually they actually say used, but they look like they are here in the original bag. So I don't know why it is marked off as used. Let me see if I go down here and see what it says. Condition is used. Well, they look pretty darn good here. So that's probably what helped, and they're probably complete. So anyway, that's really amazing. $525 for those, plus $8 shipping. And there are some rare figures out there, some vintage figures out there. Some of them actually were only made over in Europe, and so if you ever come across like a collector that purchased any of those back in the day and brought them over to the United States and was clearing out a collection, some of those could go for crazy money. This one here is not from over in Europe, I don't believe, but this one wound up selling for almost $600 or I think it actually might have went for $500, but somewhere around there. I mean, this is a really high priced piece. It's hard to find, difficult to find. You'll see there, and this is kind of a clue on the age of it as well, that it says www.bionicle.com. If you go right now to www.bionicle.com, you're not going to find it because it doesn't exist anymore, because Lego wound up taking it down. Basically what happened is that the storyline started to just become too complex, and people just started to lose interest with it over time. And it just happens sometimes with certain brands. And so, like I said, they faded it out. They eventually tried to bring it back, but it didn't really work. And there are some people who are still nostalgic for it and, like to get some of the older pieces that are out there. So, definitely be on the lookout for it. Lego has evolved and they've moved forwards. And so, they move forwards into what they call the Hero Factory line. So many of you have heard of that, and some of those you can see here, they really do bear a resemblance to the Bionicles there. So it's interesting to see over time, historically, how these things have evolved. But those two right there, that's 12 bids, $63 plus $8, so like $70 for these two packs. So be on the lookout for Hero Factory stuff as well. So anyway, just take it full circle. There you can see there. So did pretty well selling someone's quote-unquote garbage in his quote-unquote garbage can, and did very well doing it. Anytime you could turn $3 into $150. I call that a great day. So I hope this influences you to go and look around the house, try to find some Bionicles maybe that are laying around that you could sell, any kind of merchandise, and be on the lookout for this in the future whenever we could get back to sourcing. So who knows when that will be. In the state of New York, we just found out today, not surprising given what's going on in the state with the coronavirus pandemic, that there are not going to be any garage sales anytime soon, any auctions, anything like that. And it's like a state mandate. So who knows when you will see me go back to actual physical treasure hunting, but I've got to innovate as well. And so doing videos like this are the next best thing that I could think of to help you out. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button. Super important to subscribe. Like I said, 50% of people watching my videos are not subscribing, which is killing me. So please, please subscribe if you are watching the channel. It mean the world to me if you did that. So also, make sure you come over to my Facebook group, the Facebook Reselling Resource Center. Links to all these things are down below, as well as to my Instagram account, which I mentioned earlier. That's at prime_time_treasure. I'll see you all back in the next video, everyone. Take care.